Welcome to Roaming with Restless Women, real talk with wise, dynamic women leaders. I'm Julie Noonan, your host, CEO, and founder of Intuitive Wisdom Coaching, and I'm living my dream life. I live and work in my RV, coaching senior women leaders as they navigate corporate politics, family drama, and personal goals to live their own dream lives. These women are restless. They are never done seeking new opportunities, learning, and ways to create value in the world. If you'd like to apply to be a guest, stick around to the end of the show and I'll let you know how. So let's go. Hi again, and welcome to this episode of Roaming with Restless Women. Today I have with me Jenna Stalker. Jenna is a visionary conscious leadership coach and the driving force behind the Center for Conscious Leadership. She empowers emerging and seasoned women leaders to harness unshakable confidence, crystal clear clarity, leading from their strengths and values. Jenna's coaching transforms communication, fosters trust, and ensures decisive, powerful choices amidst chaos and change. With an unwavering commitment to refine leadership through deep listening, self-reflection, and curiosity, Jenna excels at turning challenging conversations into growth opportunities. She delivers actionable strategies and meaningful results, especially during career transitions, heightened leadership responsibilities, and organizational change. You and I are just like, this is what we do. Jenna's blend of insight, empathy, and strategic guidance ensures leaders make powerful, decisive choices and lead with authenticity and impact. Welcome, Jenna.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Julie. Thank you for sharing kind of what I do, what my passion is, and how maybe some of my restlessness got me to where I'm at.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I think we're career twins.
So it sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I started on change management, and consulting along that route. And then I started coaching senior women leaders as well. So it'll be interesting to compare notes with you today. It's going to be great.
Let's do it. Yeah,
Let's do
let's do
it.
it.
All right. So what the first thing I ask everyone is tell me a little, obviously, about your life, and how you wound up in this particular career.
Oh, that is okay. So let's see how succinctly I can share that. I think there's always been this burning passion for understanding why do we do what we do? Like, why do humans interact this way? Why do we have the kinds of conversations that either uplift or take us like off the rails? And I've been interested in that since I was a little kid. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I've always had this passion for human behavior, right? And along the way, as I went through schooling, I said, I really want to study more about psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much within that like broad umbrella of psychology that took me to so many different interesting places. But kind of where I ended up when I was going to school, because I took a longer path to getting my degree in that at some point I didn't know really how to apply psychology in the way that I really wanted to. And maybe it's just by happenstance, I ended up working for a management consulting firm like midway through and worked full time and then finished part time, which took me a little bit longer to
Yeah.
get my degree. But I learned so much in the meantime. And I also learned how can you apply this body of work around human behavior in the workplace. So as things evolved in my career, I started off doing like project coordination and project management work for this consulting firm. One thing led to another, and I realized this is great from that consultant perspective and really working with some fabulous people who taught me a lot
Mm-hmm.
about human behavior and team dynamics and change management and conflict resolution. But I also wanted to know what it was like to be, it's like on the inside. Like as a
Yes.
consultant, you to right an organization, you work your partnership, but at some point you do leave. And I've always been curious, well, what happens afterwards? Like what happens when the consultant leaves and they say, great, we've taught you how to fish, go fish now on your own.
Right.
So I spent a few years as an internal senior learning and development professional, leading leadership development in a variety of different organizations until one day I felt like I was hitting a wall, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
where I loved like the aspect of developing leaders and coaching leaders as an internal, manager, leader, and practitioner. But there were other aspects of my job being internal that weren't igniting my passion in the same way.
Yeah.
And so it was at that point I had a little moment where I thought, well, what do I do? I'm like, I'm certainly not going to retire. I still have a lot of fire in my belly to help and create a legacy and lift people up. And that's when I went on my own retreat to figure out what is the next phase? What happened?
Nice. Yeah.
Right. And so what was born of that is I came home and this whole notion of maybe at some point in my career, I say, go off on my own, open my own coaching practice.
Yes.
That's like, it's like years away, at least 5 years away. When I come back from the retreat with a really clear directive, that was, you're ready now, do this now. And I remember saying to my husband, like, so here's the thing. I think I'm gonna, like go off on my own. I'm gonna put my notice in and start this practice. And he says, that's great. Like when, like 3, 5 years from now, I'm like, I'm thinking by the end of the year. And so it was like, oh well now, so we did have to talk, right? Because we're in a partnership, and this is not just what I want to do, but
Right.
other people are always involved. Same thing in leadership. You might have a vision for something, but you do need to involve a bunch of other people to make it
Yes.
happen.
Uh-huh.
That was about 9 years ago, and I have
Uh-huh.
had coaching practice ever since.
That's
And
amazing.
right,
Well, the interesting thing, I really do think we're career twins. Only I went through my transition the opposite way.
really,
Excuse me.
yeah,
So I started internally, then I went into consulting,
right.
and then I went back into internal, and then I went back into consulting. And as
Oh,
opposed to consciously thinking, I want to start my own business, I got laid off at the age of 57 during COVID.
oh,
So the
that's
band-aid was ripped
transition,
off, and I started my coaching business and my consulting business, an independent consultant. It's just really interesting how our careers, had the similar paths. So,
yes.
so what value do you hold that you've held throughout your whole life that you see in all of your career choices?
Right. Um, I think probably the most resounding um value, I think that comes up time and time again, or I say it's this value, it's also one of my strengths is my love of learning. I always want to like push myself to my learning edge, as I call it, right? Because if when I do that, I'm doing something new. I'm stretching myself, and I will not go back into the same shape or form that I was in prior when I do that. So I think as I've kind of moved through my career and made the decisions I've made, there's a little bit of like, okay, I've done enough that I have confidence to do a little something different.
Mhm.
And somehow, I don't know, I think it's because of this level of learning, I embrace a bit of the unknown.
Yes.
That doesn't always mean that it always feels ecstatically joyful or energetic, because sometimes I will push myself so much that I get to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? What, and so I think as I'm thinking about, the women that you even work with, and people who might be listening to this too, is embrace your learning edge, right? That's one of, I think, the values that I live by, and I love to like support other people, is like tap into your love of learning. It will take you
Yes.
into the unknown, but you're going to be so much stronger and different and more resilient when you go through that.
Yes. Absolutely true. If you're not learning, you're dead, right?
Right? Right. And I know there's a lot of other values that are around there, but from that lens, right, it's life-giving and
It
it's
is.
transformational.
Let me ask you this question. It just occurred to me, considering that both of us have been in the consulting profession. Do you think that having the variety, when you're working in a consulting profession, like you said, it's not the same people all the time, it's not the same projects all the time, and there's a beginning and a middle and an end to every project. Do you think that that kind of heightens our natural curiosity or our natural need for variety?
Oh, that's a great question. No one has really asked it of me in that way. Um, I would say yes, it would probably heighten it, right? It would heighten it, and I think it helps you hone that curiosity. It helps you be a bit more comfortable with the ambiguous and trying to find the common thread. I think because oftentimes in
Mhm.
that consulting space, that leader or that group is reaching out to say help, right? Which is really quite courageous to do. So
Yes,
let's acknowledge
yes.
that. And as that consultant, you're looking for, well, in what way can I best support this person or this group,
Hmm.
and root it in or like ground it in so that it feels less tumultuous for them.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of curiosity. It takes a lot of that ability to really appreciate the differences that everyone brings and know that there truly isn't a cookie cutter like answer or approach,
Right. There never
right? To this.
is. There never
Mm.
is because we're not cookie cutter people. And that's another thing that, it really bothers me. Sometimes in our culture, we try to label or, put people in boxes with predefined characteristics and traits when that's not really how it is in real life. It always comes down to the individual.
Absolutely. Right. I think that's why
Mhm.
I was also drawn to coaching in this.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but I was finding that as I learned more about coaching, because I'd been in that consulting arena and learning and development, which felt,
Hmm.
I mean, definitely
Hmm.
there's an approach to educating and to training,
Hmm.
and yet coaching from my perspective. So I only speak from my perspective because I don't want to put words in other people's minds or mouths. Is that I found that coaching was a deeper dive into that learning process. It allowed
Right.
for choice. That I found really important.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, sorry, kind of it was like, well, you said choice, and that just really sprung up for me. Like it's choice. I get to choose whenever I'm in a new situation. Do I want to be curious or do I want to make myself right or wrong, or make the other person right or wrong, which is very binary thinking. So
Yes.
how can I be in this kind of liminal sort of space and be okay with it?
Yes. It's very
Yeah.
difficult, I think, for a lot of people to not want to be right all of the time. And I
Right.
think that's part of emotional intelligence. As you become a better leader and a better person, overall, you realize no one has the right answer. There are right
Yeah.
answers, and we need to find them together. Tell me about your transition from consulting to coaching, because when I transitioned, I found I have two companies. One is my consulting company and one is my coaching company. And I have to literally stop and think, okay, it is this meeting from a coach perspective or is this meeting from a consultant perspective? How about you? What do you find is the big difference or challenge there? Or maybe you didn't have the challenge. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh gosh, Julie, I'm so glad you brought this up because I have been, it's actually a challenge that's really alive and well for me as well.
Yes.
And so glad you brought this up. Like, oh, I don't feel so alone now.
No.
So thank you. And yes, I agree, right? I sometimes I step into consulting mode because of some of the work that I do.
Hmm.
Um, they're using assessments and debriefing assessments, looking at the research and trying to figure out like what makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
from what are we going to measure? But then there's the coaching piece, right? So, well, first, how I started to make that transition was I think what really drew me to coaching is I was still internal as a learning and development leader. And I was recognizing that we kind of had hit a plateau for developing our leaders. And this was, I think this was back in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I mean, coaching had been around for a while, but it was starting to really take hold in the corporate setting in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a few consultants that I knew that said, "Oh, well, I'll help coach your leaders." So I said, "Well, tell me more about this. How is this different than what we've been doing?" And I shadowed them with a few of the leaders in that organization I was at. And I thought, I think I need to dig into this a little more because what I was seeing was they were still just telling
Right.
the leaders what they needed to do. And I thought, now that doesn't seem very different than what we've kind of been doing. So that was where my coaching journey really began. And as I dug into that, and I was really, really fortunate for the organization I was working with. They said, "Hey, this is what we pay you to do. We pay you to bring in like the best ideas, the best approaches. And if you need to learn something in order to do that, we will support you." And so they
Nice.
actually supported my coach training through almost nearly all of it,
Wow.
which was such a gift. Yeah. Um, when I went through that training, that's when I realized training is really good to a point. At some point now, we need to, like I said, teach people how to fish, but give them the choice. Choice is so important, right? And so that's where I have to switch hats and I get really clear. I almost like envision I'm wearing coach hat right now,
Yep.
and I am full of questions. And then as I'm listening, maybe even to the person I might be coaching, again, it's about choice. And so
Mm-hmm.
I may share, no, wait a minute, I'm not sure if it's because you don't know what you don't know, or do you really have the answer in you, what's happening? And so as we have that conversation, I may actually say, you know what, I'm going to take my hat off right now and let me put on more of my leader consultant sort of hat
Mm-hmm.
and just share a story or an experience I had and how does this resonate with you?
Right.
Because what I'm doing then is being so intentional about how I show up, even in that moment. So that's
Yes.
how I switch gears. I don't know if
It's
that
incredibly
helped. Or,
important. And I'm a relatively new coach, just certified 2 years ago. However,
congratulations.
oh, thank you. What I have found to be really interesting is I was almost naturally coaching some of the sponsors of my change projects because they didn't want to be told. They didn't want, the advisory piece. They just wanted someone to talk them through and to challenge them. And so I wound up being the questioner of a lot of my sponsors of change projects, just
Yeah.
because they didn't want my suggestions, not mine particularly, but they wanted to figure it out, which was beautiful. That's what I love that. I absolutely love that of them. And I absolutely found that I loved that kind of a relationship as opposed to um, some of the relationships that I had with sponsors on change projects. They would come back and they would say, "Hey, write me you say that I need to go and do a town hall. Well, write me the questions or write me my script or whatever." That's that's not leadership. You
Right?
know, well, what do
So
you need
true.
to say? Do you even know
I
what it's
it's nice
about?
to have that support, but it's not, yeah, leadership. Like, don't, yeah. So I'm just going to encourage anyone who is listening to really find your own voice. Know when you want somebody to challenge you and ask the
Mhm.
questions and help you refine your thinking, but
Yes.
then to really like root on down into like, what is my voice? What are my strengths? What are my values? How are those speaking through me in my words and in my actions? Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. So tell me about the biggest transition or the biggest change that you've been through, either in your career or in your personal life, and what you've learned from that situation.
Mm. There are
Just
a
pick one.
lot. I know, we just one. Okay, I'm going to go with the most recent one. It's a personal one. It does impact, like, on like career and business, but the most recent one was 2 years ago. My husband and I decided to move from Southeast Michigan to Southern Arizona,
Uh-huh.
right? Our values, what we wanted in life was, I want to say, it was shifting. It was always a dream of ours. And at some point we had to pause and look at ourselves and go, oh yeah, we're kind of at that stage in life where we said, like, 10 years ago, when we get here, we want to be living somewhere else. We want to be,
Yes.
have our life look a certain way. I'm like, wow, that last 10 years went by fast. Uh, so we had this discussion, like, is now the time. And it was. So what that entailed for us, and we made the decision, even though we had planted the seed, we put it into like our vision board for a
Mm-hmm.
number of years, it felt like it happened fairly quickly. And so I will say the biggest transitions sometimes happen. The seed may have been planted, but all of a sudden it sprouts. And it sprouted for us in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And within a matter of months, it it all like unfolded. We sold our
Mm-hmm.
house in Michigan. We packed everything up, moved down to Tucson. Um, when we got there, we knew when we first moved to Tucson that where we were was just like our landing pad. We still
Okay.
needed to find what we call our forever for now home.
Mm-hmm.
And so we landed there, got all unpacked, remodeled the place that we had because it hadn't been remodeled in like 30 years. And we knew if we weren't going to live there forever, then we'd have to sell it. The only way to sell it decently was to remodel it. So we went through all of the remodeling, um, 7 or 8 months worth. And then within about a couple of weeks, literally, we found the house that we are in now and did that move quickly, bought it, sold it, packed everything up
Oh
and moved.
my goodness.
It was, and then started a remodeling project here because we loved it, except for a kitchen that wasn't functional. So anyway, so we had like a lot of remodeling, and I'll say from all of that, even though personal transition and change was, be kind to yourself through all
Mm,
of that, right? We can get so focused on the task and you can get it done, but at some point, like, you might not even realize that you need to pause or just like take a breather, but do it, because I felt really burned out about mid-year this year,
mm,
until I don't understand what's happening. I don't have it anymore. And I will say this, especially as we move on in our career, right? There's the physical aging of our bodies that we sometimes overlook.
mm-hmm.
And be kind to yourself and don't hold that yardstick up to like how you were 20 years ago. And I would say
Correct.
that for, right, just pay attention to that, like, well, what is happening in this moment now, and where are you mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of that. How is that different than where you were, whatever, a year ago, 5 years ago? So that's probably one of my biggest takeaways
Mm.
was really be kind to yourself. And I know this is something that I have been talking about for many years, but it just really showed up very strongly and had me take another look at what does that really mean, right?
Aren't
And
aren't we the shoemaker's children?
we
Right?
are.
We teach learning and development. We teach the skills. We teach the practices. And how often do we turn around at some point and look at our lives and say, I'm not using my own, I'm not drinking my own tea, if you know what I mean. Um, or I'm not allowing myself to have the same resources as I'm providing to other people, etc. So how am I getting better? How can I ask them to get better or be better if I'm not doing it for myself? So once again, we're right here
Right? I'm looking at you, Julie.
looking at
Right?
you. You know it. So tell me a few of the things that you do in your current job for the Center for Conscious Leadership. What is that all about? And tell me about your programs and services.
Thank you. So primarily it is coaching leaders, right? Especially women in a leadership role, senior
Mm-hmm.
leadership role, because it as you move through your career and if you are moving into greater levels of leadership, it can become even more isolating. And
Yes.
I think anybody, whether, regardless of gender, leadership at higher levels becomes even more lonely at the top. And so
Yes.
the coaching I do is really to support those leaders to say, hey, I'm in your back pocket when you need to talk strategy or you're thinking about even the strategy of like, how do I have this difficult conversation? The coaching that I do is really helping people find their words because we will oftentimes jump to an assumption, make a really quick conclusion about what is happening that isn't true. And so in coaching fashion, I'm always asking my clients, like,
Mm-hmm.
is that really true? What else might be possible? Or can you for a moment just hold the possibility that something else is going on? And if
Right.
you can, what might it be? Right. So a lot of the coaching I do is kind of helping people work through that ambiguity, the volatile sorts of situations that occur in the workplace. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the primary piece. But along the way, what happens is when I'm working, especially if it's one-on-one with them, they'll say, can you come in and work with my team because we've had some changes. I feel like things aren't the same. I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand why I'm not leading in the way that I want to lead with this group. So oftentimes I'll work with the team themselves, say, how can you become a much more cohesive team? What is it going to take? What's your purpose for this team? What are your values? Like what are the behaviors by which we agree to operate by?
Mm-hmm.
We look at the vision and priority goals and your roles and getting very clear on all of those aspects so that that team can come together and be as highly effective as they can be. So the tools then that I use, I love assessments.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this goes back to like, I like that data. I like something to kind of point to start the conversation. So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm working with leaders, we use some tools to help them understand how are they building trust with one-on-one relationships? How are you building trust in your teams? First of all, what does trust even mean or look like? What are those core behaviors for that? How passionate or engaged are your team members or your organization as well? And when we dive into the data, that does help give like I'll say a more neutral language, right? Because we'll often
Yes.
use judgment laden language to describe what the situation is. So I use that as to be a bit more objective, but then also use that data to say, if this is happening and do we find that this is really true, where might you want to go next to help remedy this so that you're not doing the exact same thing?
I love how
So
you ask that because it's not what do you want to fix in yourself, right? There are so many assumptions around how you provide feedback or how you coach someone, and a lot of those misconceived notions includes if I need a coach, it's because I need to fix something. When
yeah,
in reality, it's I need a coach because I want to just keep getting better and better.
absolutely. Absolutely, right? It's about refining.
Yes.
Refine what you already do well. Find where your little stretch zones are
Yeah.
and kind of it's a lot of the reflective practice, and I think partnering with a coach offers that container to have a reflective practice, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
having your coach either ask you the questions or even reflect back, what are they witnessing or seeing. It just helps you think a little more clearly and maybe even see yourself in a slightly different light, right? That does
Exactly.
boost your confidence. Yeah.
I find that coaching provides probably one of the only spaces in your life where it can be and it should be and it will be all about you.
Yeah. Right. Truly. I
you
mean, right,
know?
because they say talk to friends. You might have some friends who give fabulous advice and that you
Hmm.
do lean on. Those are great, but I will just encourage people find a coach because it's a very different sort of relationship.
Yes.
And it's action oriented, right? So you want something to change and you're working towards something, but your
Right.
coach will listen to you in a way that's really different than your friends or your, siblings, family members, or whomever it might be, your coworkers for
Well,
that
the
matter.
coach doesn't bring any baggage to the table.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. I would say as a coach, it's like I imagine being a hollowed reed. Just let
Yeah.
it flow through you, right? Be really
Hmm.
curious, but um, just listening in a very different way. And I think most people, coaches have been trained, well, I think naturally they do this, but we've also been trained to
Yes.
listen
Hmm.
in a really objective sort of way, in service to the learning and growth of our clients.
Right. Right. And
And
you can't
and
bring judgment into that relationship. That's impossible if you're doing it well.
you can't, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
So I end every single episode with three questions, or well, three
Okay.
things, I'll say. The first one is a little weird, but I'll ask you to play along. I'll ask you to close your eyes for just a moment,
Okay.
and I'm going to say a couple of words, and I'm going to ask you to open your eyes in and describe the picture that appeared in your mind when I said the two words.
Okay.
Wise woman.
All right. Can I open my
So,
eyes
what
now?
do you see? You
What
can
do I
open your
see?
eyes.
Okay, thank you. Um, I actually saw, it sounds interesting. As soon as you said wise woman, the very first image was an, it's funny, I was saying an older woman, but I want to really be cautious of saying older woman and then hearing
No,
people take this out of context.
no, they won't. Don't
And
worry
that,
about it.
okay. Uh, I saw an older woman, like if there's like, but it's more of the sensing of what
Yeah.
I picked up when we said wise woman. And there is a calm, as if like the wind is blowing around you and the trees are rustling and maybe if there are leaves falling on the earth's floor, they're moving around, but that wise woman is very sturdy, very stable within all of that and just knows like this too shall pass.
Mhm.
Yeah, like there's a calmness, there's like that deep wisdom of
Yeah.
I'm noticing, I'll pay attention, but every little breeze does not mean I go run away because it's not a threat. Right.
Or I don't run to
It's
go
like,
fix it either.
well, isn't that the truth, right? I don't, yes, I think that's what it is. Like I just like such a calm presence that means like I am whole as I am right now. I don't need to fix
Yes.
it, fix anyone. I don't need to run and hide. Here I am.
Perfect. I just am here to live.
I'm here to live. Yeah.
I'm here to live.
And that is
Ah,
enough.
that's enough. That's exactly right. So, where do you like to roam then?
Where do I like to roam? I really like to roam in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Really, and anywhere, put me anywhere in nature, and that's my favorite roaming spot. Right.
Perfect.
So I have a couple things on my bucket list of other places I really want to roam to next. Uh, but
What's
anywhere
one
in
of
nature,
those? Just out of curiosity.
Portugal,
Portugal. I keep
Portugal.
hearing Portugal. I must be destined to go to Portugal. I have heard Portugal like four times this week. It's amazing.
I will meet you there, Julie.
Okay,
I
we'll
will meet
just
you there.
go. We'll just go. And then be wise women in the forest, letting the trees go around us. How about that?
Yes, absolutely.
And then finally, my final question. What makes you restless in a good way?
Good, right? Um, Knowing that there is always something more to give or to do. Right? I always say there's a lesson to be learned, right? There's something
Mhm.
I need to be receiving, and there's a lesson to be giving. I think that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me a little restless. If my senses that isn't happening,
Mhm.
the rest of my senses kind of go on alert and be like, listen, girl, you need to go out and be doing something and either learning something or providing something like that's my soul's contract.
I
There's a
love that.
purpose.
Soul's contract.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I might have to add a question to the next session.
Oh,
What's your
okay.
soul's contract? I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. You coined that phrase. I'm going to steal it.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Jenna. How can people get a hold how can people get a hold of you after this episode?
Oh, absolutely. They can follow me on LinkedIn. I think if we put a link in
I will
wherever
put it
that
in the
might
show
be, wherever you're going
notes.
to place it. LinkedIn's a really fun place to connect with me there. I try and jump on at least a few times a week and share some thoughts, and we just want to be either inspirational or educational. But I have two different websites, one specifically for some of the assessments that I use and my research team has been working on for the last, 4+ decades around building trust. And that
Okay.
is integraleadership.com. Or
Okay.
just check out my other services and some of the other coaching and retreats that I offer at jennastalker.com.
Okay. Integral. Let me get this one because I'm not sure it was on my. Julie Noonan here. Thank you so much for listening to Roaming with Restless Women. If you're a successful senior woman leader who would like to be on this program, please visit podcast.intuitivewisdomcoach.com. If you enjoyed this interview, please share this episode on social media and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show, and they mean a lot to me, my team, and most importantly, my restless guests. As a special gift to you, our listeners, I offer a free one-on-one 15-minute breakthrough session. Bring a problem and experience how coaching works to see if it could be of value to you. Sign up for an available time on my website, intuitivewisdomcoach.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.